you have lived through multiple recessions. You've covered a ton of like articles and blogs on inflation and economic factors, and we're going to jump into that. But before that, you've been successful in multiple areas of real estate investment, and we're not going to cover your whole story. Most of our listeners probably already know who you are, but you've just done a lot of pivots. You started, with flipping a 70s style ranch. You've done hundreds of flips, short sales, spec homes, ground up, now multifamily. Talk to us a little bit about the mindset of identifying the right strategy and the right timing to make these moves, and balancing that between, the shiny object syndrome, right? Jumping too quickly.
Yeah. So it's funny. This is a topic that I'm near and dear to my heart, but I don't write about it nearly enough. But I am a big fan of being able to pivot. I found that over the years, the most successful investors I've met are the ones that are flexible, the ones that aren't just so focused on their business today that they ignore what they're going to be doing 3 months, 6 months, 2 years from now, because the market's always going to change. And what's working today in one area isn't going to be what's working tomorrow in the same area. Or if you want to expand to new areas, it's not going to be what's working in the new area. And so the best investors out there are the ones that, you have to focus on your business today. You have to be the best at whatever you're doing, but you also have to spend some time thinking about where is the market headed, and where is your business headed, and where is the industry headed. And so over the years, I'm not a big fan of saying, okay, let's do something today, and then tomorrow we're going to pick up and we're going to do something completely different. Basically, every pivot that I've made has been taking the skills that I learned previously and applying them in some way to a new area. So just to put some specifics behind it. So 2008, I started flipping houses. And in 2008, it was really easy to find houses. I mean, there were so many foreclosures. I was in Atlanta. Literally, I could throw a dart at the MLS, and whatever it hit was probably going to be a pretty good deal. And so from 2008 to 2010-ish, 11-ish, all we bought were foreclosures. My first 150 houses were foreclosures that we bought right off the MLS. 2010, I started to notice that for the first time, there was some competition. And I know anybody that was investing before 2008 probably remembers that, but after 2008, I mean, literally in my county, there might have been 3 of us that were investing. So I had no competition. 2010, I started to notice that there was some competition. I started to recognize that it was harder to get stuff off the MLS because there were a whole bunch of us competing for these deals on the MLS, and prices were starting to go up. And so I realized that, okay, I need to figure out another acquisition strategy. And so I started reading and studying, and I learned all about this idea of off-market deal finding. And so going out directly to sellers, either through bandit signs, through direct mail, through cold calling, through door knocking, whatever it was. And I also started to notice in 2010, just looking at the data, that we still had a decent number of foreclosures, but as foreclosures were coming down, short sales were going up. And so that kind of set off 2 things in my mind. Number one, it's going to be harder to get deals in the next couple of years. So I have to learn how to do off-market deal finding. And number 2, there's not going to be as many foreclosures. So I'm going to have to find another niche, another type of deal that I'm going to be looking for. So in 2010, we kind of pivoted and said, okay, we're still going to keep flipping houses, but now we're going to start going to off-market acquisition strategies. And now we're going to focus on short sales. And for like 3 years, all we did was short sales. That's not true. We did some foreclosures, but the bulk of what we were doing was short sales, and the bulk of what we were doing was direct mail. And so for 3 years, again, things were really easy. Nobody else was doing direct mail. Nobody else was going after short sales because it was kind of a complicated strategy. So for 3 years, we had it easy. Just like the previous 3 years, we had it easy just doing foreclosures off the MLS. 2013 started to see a little bit of competition again, and I started to recognize that, okay, maybe we need to start rethinking exactly what it is that we're going to be doing for the next couple of years. So 2013, I started to notice that everybody was kind of competing for the same deals. Lots of people were doing off-market strategies. Lots of people were doing flips. But that's when I started to notice that that some of the leading investors, those that I kind of looked up to and were following, had started doing this thing called ground up infill construction. Basically, they were buying single family houses that were dilapidated, knocking them down and rebuilding them from scratch. And these days, everybody's kind of building ground up. But back then, nobody was doing it. And so I said, okay, well, here's a new niche. I can still use all of my strategies from foreclosures and short sales and acquisition strategies to find deals. But now I can go after these deals that nobody else are going after. And these are those things that are really dilapidated that literally need to be knocked down and rebuilt. So 2013, we bought our first infill new construction project, and we started building ground up. And for the next 2 or 3 years, basically, we focused on infill new construction. And again, nobody else was doing it at that time. We were a couple years ahead of everybody. 2015, 16 comes around. Everybody starts buying single family houses to knock down and rebuild. So as I see more competition coming into that space, I think, okay, what's next? And ultimately, basically my goal was always to try and stay a year or two ahead. I don't want to be completely on the edge because then there's probably not a lot of opportunity, but I also don't want to be back with the pack because then I'm competing. So I always try and be just a little bit ahead of everybody else. And I always kind of look to other investors that I consider to be kind of on the leading edge to see what they're focused on. And then I might stick 6 months behind them. I let them kind of figure out all the new tactics and all the new strategies and follow what they're doing. And then 6 months later, after they've kind of gotten it all figured out, I just copy them. And so for me, copying what other people are doing, smart people are doing, has kind of been my mantra. 2017, I started to realize that I felt like we had a recession coming. Obviously, I was off by a couple years, may even been off by 5 years. I mean, I don't know if you want to even consider 2020 a recession, but I felt like, hey, the market's going to change. Where do I want to be when the market changes? And I decided multifamily is the place I wanted to be when the market changed. And I knew that it was going to take me a year or two to really learn the multifamily space, to build up my network of investors, to build up my network of brokers that I'd be getting deal flow from. And so 2017, I said, okay, by 2020, I want to be fully entrenched in multifamily. So I started making that transition in 2017. By 2019, I found a multifamily operator that I was friends with. She kind of taught me the business, brought me into her company. We ended up becoming partners. Here we are in 2022. We've been partners for a couple of years. We're kind of going strong in multifamily. And now I'm starting to see everybody kind of getting into multifamily these days. And so we need to continue to stay kind of on the leading edge there. And so for anybody out there, I highly encourage you. I know that was a long way of saying it, but I highly encourage you to kind of always be thinking about not only being the best at what you're doing today, but thinking about what you need to be doing tomorrow to stay a step or two ahead of everybody else, and getting really good at that, because then you can stay a step or two ahead and keep moving, keep pivoting. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with pivoting. It's a good thing.